Point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week, our 315th show. That's a lot of shows.
It is that.
Yeah. Anyway, here we are for you. George Harvey, that's me, and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. Philanthropist, world traveler, and expert at many things. Every day I get up and I go to the internet and I find what news I can about climate change and energy. And everything that I find that I think is sufficiently interesting, I put together a 50-word or so synopsis and a link, about 15 usually of those, but it's 10 to 15 are assembled and put into a post. About half of them have photographs. And that post goes up on my blog, which is geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. And there's a calendar there, and if you click on the date of an item, and we will try to keep you up to date on what date it is that we're talking about, you can click on that item and read the original article. And take it away, Tom.
Well, usually about this time I say something. I'm going to put me up here.
There you go.
If I sometimes look like a deer in the headlights, it's because I'm looking at the screens over here.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah.
But in any case, I usually say something about this, that some of these articles that we talk about are very interesting and in depth.
Absolutely.
And, you know, as I have said in the past, we could devote a whole show just to one of them sometimes.
Yep.
And I guess we've come close, made some specials. But I'll try and alert you to some of the more interesting ones so that you can look them up yourself.
Yeah.
And some this week are very definitely worth pursuing.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, the very first one.
The first one, you know, we don't put up a lot of pictures of people, but
we got a picture here.
We have a picture of this one, and we're starting on April 18th.
Who's the guy with the white suit?
I don't know, but the girl on the other side of him is Greta Thunberg. That reminds me of a very silly joke about a guy who went all over the United States at the behest of one person and another and took his friend along. And the President of the United States, he went to Washington, met the President of the United States. The President asked him to talk to the Queen. The Queen asked him to talk to the Pope. He went to Rome, and his friend said, "Who is that up there on that balcony?" to an Italian who was standing next to him. And the Italian said, "I don't know who the guy in the white hat is, but the guy next to him is Larry Custer." What can I say?
There's a similar joke to that about this guy. I had his name is Goldberg.
Yeah.
And Goldberg supposedly knows everybody.
Yes.
And he's talking to his friend and his friends. You know everybody? Look, there's going to be a limousine coming by here. You know, and in the limousine is Goldberg and the Pope. And so one of the guys says to Goldberg, "Hey, who's that guy sitting there?" Wow. He talks to the first guy. "Who's that guy sitting next to Goldberg?"
Yeah. And?
He doesn't recognize the Pope. He recognizes Goldberg.
Absolutely. There you go. Okay, now in this particular case, there's a reason why we're making these jokes, and the reason is because of Greta Thunberg.
I'm going to bring her up again.
There she is. You know, this little girl. She's 16 years old. I don't know when she
doesn't even look 16.
No, she does not look 16. She looks like she's about 8. She made herself famous locally by sitting outside the Parliament of Sweden every Friday, skipping school. Truancy. She was guilty of truancy. And
yes, she was. Oh my God.
She was protesting climate change, and now she's got people all over the world following her. And she met the Pope.
Well, she's a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize.
That's right. She was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by 3 members of the Norwegian Parliament.
And
That's
she's Swedish.
She's Swedish, not Norwegian. Anyway, this is an item from CNN. What have you got, Tom?
Well, let's put her up.
Put Greta
again.
back up.
Yeah, Greta Thunberg meets the Pope after scolding EU leaders on climate change. EU is the European Union.
Yeah. Teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg met Pope Francis at the Vatican. A day earlier, she had addressed a committee of the European Parliament, scolding them for spending their time, quote, arguing about taxes or Brexit, end quote, in the face of a building climate crisis.
Well, this article came from CNN.
Yeah.
And CNN is always worth looking at. They
Yes.
always have a little extra in there.
Yeah.
This particular case, it's a 2-minute video of Greta.
Of Greta.
And it says,
Talking.
meet 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg talking to leaders all over Europe.
And
She's talking to the English Parliament in that little film
She speaks English very well.
Oh, yeah, she does.
Very clear.
Little takeaway here.
Yeah.
The Swedish 16-year-old urged European Union leaders to panic. She's telling them to panic about climate change.
Yeah.
She went on to condemn politicians for spending their time arguing about taxes or Brexit in the face of a climate crisis.
Yep.
She is trying to raise their awareness
She's
and get them to do
apparently
something about it.
succeeding to a large extent, too. Our next item is also from CNN.
Again, it's from CNN. Yep. Official warning to banks. Get real about climate change or risk going bust. That's a good one.
Yeah, central bankers and finance regulators from 34 countries, including the UK, France, Germany, China, and Japan, have warned banks to act urgently to fight climate change or risk going bust. The policymakers argue that the banks must invest sustainably.
Absolutely.
And what they're talking about is, you know, if you're too invested in fossil fuels, you're going to have a serious problem.
You're going to lose.
You're going to lose.
It's not a good investment, guys.
Yep.
Well, this also was CNN, and they got a good video here, minute and a half. Al Gore.
Yeah.
Talking about Trump's resistance to climate change.
Right.
And it's interesting because I didn't recognize Gore. He's got gray hair now.
No, yeah, he's.
I mean, he still looks good, but didn't recognize him.
I keep wondering whether Mar-a-Lago or Donald Trump is going to last longer.
Well, you know, climate change is happening.
It's
Mar-a-Lago
happening,
is
and
low.
the oceans are at the highest temperature they have ever been.
Yeah.
Or at least in human history, and as far as
And they're
we know.
high, and they're getting higher.
And they are what fuel the storms.
Yes. Well, we'll be talking about that, I believe.
Okay, we've got an item coming up from Wired, and I want to warn you, Tom, I don't know that you noticed, we've got an extra item this week, so we've got to work
I didn't notice.
just a little bit faster.
One extra item?
One extra item.
Well, we can deal with that.
Yeah, we can deal with it.
Offshore wind farms are spinning up in the U.S. at last.
On June 1st, the Pilgrim nuclear plant in Massachusetts will shut down, a victim of hard nuclear power economics. The electricity it generated will be replaced by another carbon-free source, a fleet of 84 wind turbines rising 650 feet above the ocean's surface. They won't appear all of a sudden, and they're not going in yet, but they've been approved.
Yeah, and that's 84. That's a significant number of these.
It's a significant number, that's right.
Well, let's see what I got a couple of things here because it is interesting. The turbines south of Martha's Vineyard, which is where they're going, will generate 800 megawatts of electricity, which is fairly significant.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, starting in 2022. And from this article, it says officials say offshore wind has the potential to generate nearly double the nation's current electricity use.
Right. That's
just in the East Coast.
Just East Coast offshore wind.
Offshore wind. And there are currently 15 active proposals for wind farms along the East Coast.
Yeah.
So we will be seeing that being exploited.
More. That's
and we're going to talk a little
right.
bit more about this below.
Okay, we are up to Friday, April 19th, and actually we've got a picture of a little
picture here.
part of a wind
this
turbine.
is an interesting
This is
picture.
an interesting picture.
Take a look at the right-hand side of that picture.
down in the corner.
Down in the corner, you'll see some guys. And to give you some idea how big that damn thing is.
You could drive a truck into that thing.
That's at least 20 feet in diameter.
It is a blade of a wind turbine. You know? I mean,
Yeah.
this thing is huge. Okay, what do you got for a title?
LM Wind, which is the name of the company, rolls out its first Haliade X blade. And Haliade X is the brand name for
GE.
these huge turbines.
Yep.
You're going to be telling us how
I
huge
will
this
indeed.
one is.
This is from Renews. LM Wind Power has produced the first 107-meter blade.
That's 350 feet.
This is longer
That's
than
big.
Longer than a football field, including the end zones.
Yeah.
It will be fitted to prototype GE renewable energy Haliade X 12 megawatt offshore turbine. Testing and validation will begin once finishing touches are done. If you put that picture up, you can see, by the way, running along the side of that thing is a white line, and that white line looks to me like it's a sprue.
What?
Sprue. It's
A sprue.
This
That's
thing
a
was
new word for me.
well, when you put together a mold and you cast something in that mold, you
Yeah.
can have a bit of stuff kind of sticking out the sides. And my bet is that thing was made of fiberglass, and that the resins used for making the fiberglass kind of leaked out in the molds. Now, I could be way off base on that, but that's my guess.
Believable. Yeah.
Okay.
So they have to remove that, or
they just polish it off.
polish it off?
Testing and validation will begin once finishing touches are done. The prototype is being installed in the Netherlands later this year. My recollection is that it's being installed onshore, but it's being installed in the Netherlands.
Don't know that.
12 megawatts is gigantic.
Well, the biggest one that's commercially available is 9.5,
Yeah,
and they haven't even been shipped yet.
yeah, and this thing
They're
is
making
12.
them. They've got orders for them.
This is six.
This is 12.
This is 6 times the size of a large-ish onshore wind turbine.
Well, according to the article, GE owns the business that's making this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the GE-owned business said the unit was made at its factory in France. It is one of the largest single components ever built.
Well, you know, just think about this.
It's a big thing.
This thing has to be moved, and it's 100.
That's going to be tough.
350. Well, one of the nice things about this is when you're talking about building these things and then installing them in the real world.
Yeah.
They will be built in a port and carried out to sea in ships.
Yeah.
And the ships will be designed to carry
take
these
them.
things. But how in the world are they going to ship this thing that's
From France
350
to
feet long
Yeah.
across of course, the Netherlands? You're talking about flat land.
They got it figured out.
They got it figured out, I'm sure. Okay, what's our next item?
Coming
It's
a little
from
bit closer to home here, Brian. Guys.
Clean Technica came up with this.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders calls for an end to fossil fuels. How
Bernie's-
unique.
How unique. We've done that. Maybe he watches our show. Bernie Sanders made a rather stunning proposal saying climate change is, quote, not a hoax, but an existential threat, end quote. He wants to, quote, transform our energy system away from fossil fuels and into energy efficiency and sustainable energy, and in the process create millions of good-paying jobs, end quote.
Bingo.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a quick takeaway from the article.
Yeah,
This is a quote, actually. All of us, this is Bernie I'm quoting.
yeah.
All of us have a moral responsibility to make certain that the planet we leave to our children and grandchildren is healthy and habitable.
Yes.
And climate change is the single greatest threat facing our
I
planet.
absolutely agree with him.
When we are in the White House, we will. He's got a 5-point list, which I'm not going to mention now. And then is from the article again, I figured I'd read this because it's kind of neat. Sanders is the antidote to Trumpism.
Oh boy, is he ever. You know, I tell people this, I've said it on this show, I have had people actually go out and look and say, wow, Bernie Sanders' platform in 2016 was just an update from Theodore Roosevelt's platform of 1912.
Yeah, you've said that before, and I believe it.
Here's Bernie Sanders, the socialist. Well, I've known people who have called Theodore Roosevelt and Benjamin Franklin's socialists too. This
Well,
business
Franklin,
about
he proposed that we have a government-owned post office.
that's right, and
How?
and Theodore Roosevelt, who conservative friends of mine called the Good Roosevelt, was the guy who created federal wildlife refuges. And,
Yeah, he did a lot of good things.
he did a lot of good things. Okay, we should go on.
Here we got
We have an
another picture
item
coming
here
up
from the
here.
Associated Press.
Let's get this
And
picture
we
up.
are still on what date? Friday, the 19th.
Yeah, we're still on Friday.
Yeah.
That is St. Paul, Minnesota.
St. Paul, Minnesota.
It looks like
and
there's
that is
mountains in the background, but
smoke
there aren't.
rising up from houses where people want to stay warm in Minnesota.
I would say that's all wood stoves, isn't it?
It might be. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. It gets cold enough there that steam, condensation from steam
Yeah,
doesn't
that could be
dissipate
steam.
very fast.
It could be
So
steam from boilers or something.
Yeah. Anyway,
Well, in any case, Americans' energy use surges despite climate change concern. This is a little bit scary.
it is. Americans use a record amount of energy in 2018, with a 10% jump in natural gas consumption helping to lead the way. According to the Energy Information Administration, total consumption of all fuels rose 4% year on year, the largest such increase in 8 years.
Well, fossil fuels are accounting for 80% of Americans' energy use. Now, most of that's transportation, but still,
Yeah.
it's big.
But the amount that's used for heat is very, very large.
A lot larger than it's got to be.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, it used to be that the cheapest way to heat a house was to use firewood.
Yep.
And you go out, cut down a tree in your wood lot,
Yep.
and chop it up and use it. And I've done that. And
I've done similar.
yeah, but today it's cheaper to run a heat pump than it is to buy firewood and burn it.
I haven't done the math on it, but I wouldn't bet against that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Well, heat pumps are pretty efficient.
They're very efficient. They're really kind of amazing. Okay, our next item is from Renews.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yes,
Massachusetts approves the Vineyard Power deal. Well, we just talked about that.
we did indeed. Long-term takeoff contracts for the 800 megawatt Vineyard Power Farm have being developed off the state's coast have been approved by the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. Officials said the takeoff deals will spur economic development and ensure a, quote, resilient energy future, end quote.
By the way, that's off-take, not takeoff.
Off-take? Okay, you're right.
And an off-take is an agreement between a producer and a buyer.
Right.
To buy and sell portions of the producer's future production.
Right. This is a slightly different story than the last one that we just reported.
Okay.
The last one that we reported was about the permitting.
Yeah.
This one is about approval of
They're selling the power.
They're going to be able to sell the power. The first one said you can build the wind farm. The second one said now that you've got approval to build it, you can contract for the power.
Pretty much, that's what it's saying.
Yeah.
Little sideline in this article.
Yep.
There's going to include energy storage technologies.
Yes, there is, and that is important. Okay, we are up to Saturday, April 20th.
By
You have
Jove, we got a picture.
Picture here of a wind turbine. Isn't that a lovely wind turbine?
Yeah, it is.
I can tell you those blades are not as long as the one we just showed, but
Right next to that house.
bottom tip of that blade that's pointing down is a good deal higher than most birds fly. Not higher than all birds fly, however.
It's about as high as the tops of those
It would be
trees.
interesting to know
Higher than the roof of
whether
the house.
I'll bet you that if you could do an inventory, you would find that when birds die at wind turbines, most of them are not hit by the blades. Most of them fly into the mast.
I can believe that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
So-
I think, well, for one thing, the masks, the blades are moving.
Yeah.
And the birds are aware of that.
Yeah, but the other thing is the blades are higher up. The masts of these things are near the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from etenergyworld.com.
China to promote using wind energy to power heating systems.
There you go. China's National Energy Administration urged local authorities to set annual targets for generating heating using energy from wind farms over the period of from 2019 to 2021. The country is pushing to reduce carbon emissions from all uses of coal, including heat. One of the big problems in China is that in order to get people to live in the northern part of the country, and they needed to have a lot of people there in case the Russians invaded. Okay, one of the big deals here is they had to give those people economic incentives to stay there. And one of the incentives was
cheap power.
Yeah, free coal to heat their houses.
Oh, free coal.
Free coal.
How do you beat that?
After the Second World War, Chinese didn't trust the Russians at all.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them. And but they had these people, and of course they made an SKS carbine for every adult they had in the country. And
a little paranoid, huh?
A little paranoid, yeah. Anyway, there it is, and this is we're up, as I said, to Saturday.
We're still
20th.
On Saturday, yeah.
Yep. So our next one is from Solar Power World.
This is an interesting one. Washington utility Avista commits to 100% clean energy by 2045. And the big story here is the backstory.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, let me read this, and then you can tell us about the backstory. Avista announced its goal to serve its customers with 100% clean electricity by 2045 and to have a carbon-neutral supply of electricity by the end of 2027. Avista claims a long-standing history of providing clean, reliable, and affordable energy to its customers.
Well, we'll be talking about this again in another one, but a lot of the power for Avista has been coming from a coal-burning plant in eastern Montana.
Yes.
Which is pretty far away. It's
yes.
750, 800 miles.
Yep.
Okay. And Washington is saying you can't use that power anymore.
Yes, that's right.
Now and they've been buying like about 40% of the power from that plant. So now the company's trying to figure out what are we going to do with all this extra power.
What are we going to do? Yeah, absolutely.
And just to add a little, we'll talk about this, a little interest to the whole pot there. Idaho has decided they're going to close their coal plants.
You know, this is something that the problem that
it's economics.
It's economics, and actually there was a thing that came up in the news today. And I'm not sure, there was a lot of news today. I'm not sure that this actually made it in, but if it did, into the cut for the stuff coming up for the show. But there was an article in Clean Technica talking about the fact that the last big coal burning plant in Massachusetts, which closed down 2 years ago, that site is going to be used for renewable energy.
In Massachusetts.
Storage and things
like
that.
Right. That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
The article mentioned something about the site that was really disturbing. And, you know, you hit these numbers and they just kind of go through your brain and out into Neverland.
It's just a number. Yeah.
It's just a number. But I focused on it today, and the number that I saw was 107 people, according to a study at Harvard, died because that plant was in operation.
No kidding.
Every year.
Wow.
These are premature.
We've been talking about this kind of stuff.
This is insanity. How can we have? This is one coal burning plant in Massachusetts.
It's killing people. From respiratory disease.
Yeah, over 1,100 hospital visits every year. This is three to four hospital visits every day because they're burning coal. And you know, when I was a little kid, I remember there was a story in the news about a coal mine where there was a mine collapse, and there was a very large number of miners who were trapped, and they might not make it out. And my recollection was they didn't make it out. But I said to my father, "Why don't we stop this use of coal? I mean, people are dying because of this."
Very prescient of you.
And he said, "Well, if we just stopped using coal, we wouldn't have enough electricity, and people would die because of that." It's a trade-off.
point.
Okay, it was a trade-off in
Yeah.
1952.
Not a
It's
trade-off
not a
anymore.
trade-off anymore. These people did not have to die in 2017. Well, the plant got closed, but other plants are still operating, and there are people who are fighting to keep them open.
Well, the economics are against them,
Yeah.
and it's becoming increasingly aware.
Yep.
You can't stop this.
You
and
can't stop
we'll be
renewable
talking-
energy. You can't stop climate change. You can't stop the fact that costs of renewable energy, wind power, solar power, batteries, are dropping like rocks. You know, I've talked about Wright's law. It's
This
a
is
law
reality.
a law of economics. This is the way it has been,
Yeah.
and it's the way it's most probably going to continue to
Yep.
be because of this Wright's law. Which I could spend a whole show just talking about that. We should continue going.
We'll move on here. Got an interesting picture coming
We
up.
have an interesting picture, and I want to thank Tom Fennell, whoever that is.
Whoever
He sent me an email. This particular story came up in the news on April 20th at my blog, but it was probably about 4 or 5 days old when I put it in there because I had missed it.
Well, we've been talking on this show about BYD.
Yeah,
Build
we
Your
have
Dreams,
indeed, yeah.
And this popped up at me.
Yeah.
That picture there, by the way, is an interesting picture. It's not a factory.
Oh, it's not.
That's a warehouse.
Okay.
Those cars there are all on the road. They're licensed and registered. They're taxi cabs.
Yeah, they have license
Electric
plates, don't
taxi
they?
cabs, and what they're doing in this building is they're recharging at night.
Oh, man. Well, Shenzhen is a big city. I mean, it's the 8th biggest city in China. The
It
last
is
time I
big.
looked. And it has 16,000 plus electric
There's 12
buses.
million people in Shenzhen.
Yeah.
12 million.
Yeah, but they've got
That's more than Vermont.
they've got over 16,000 buses on the road, and every single one of them is
It's
electric.
electric, yeah.
We don't have 16,000 electric buses in the United States. I don't think we've even got 3,000 electric buses
I don't
in the
think
entire
we do.
country.
I'd bet against it.
China is out manufacturing the United States by a factor of almost 100. For every bus we make, they make 100.
Well,
And-
this is an interesting story. If you got the time, read it. It's a long article,
yeah, it is.
but there's a few things about it that's interesting.
Yeah.
These cars that they're making in this factory, this BYD factory in China, are not luxury cars like Tesla. They're for the ordinary Joe.
Yeah.
They've got,
Joe? Is that a Chinese name?
well, it's spelled CHOU.
Okay.
But their biggest selling car is a family of SUVs that's retailing for 35 grand.
Okay.
Okay, and it's aimed at middle class drivers in China.
Yeah.
The cheapest model is 9 grand after
Yeah.
subsidies.
We should do our standard thing on this. This particular story came from Bloomberg. Could you read the title, please, Tom?
The world's biggest electric vehicle company looks nothing like Tesla.
There you go. The
There
number
it
one
is.
producer of plug-in vehicles globally is BYD, based in Shenzhen, China. Though it gets a tiny fraction of the attention of Tesla, BYD now has 250,000 employees and sells 30,000 vehicles every month.
Virtually all within China. They're not exporting.
They're not exporting the cars. The Chinese are, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I have an enormous respect for the Chinese.
Well, this company BYD was founded back in the mid-1990s
Yeah.
as a manufacturer of batteries.
Yes.
The guy who started it, Wang Xian
A guy started this.
A guy, single guy. He was a battery engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, and he saw the potential, got an opportunity to buy a failing battery company, and turned it into this. The guy's a multi-billionaire now.
This is not exactly China as it was under Mao Zedong.
Not quite, not quite.
Okay, we are up to Sunday.
By the way, the large bus batteries that they make
Yeah.
weigh 2 tons.
This
The
is
battery.
A battery weighs 2 tons.
And they require 4 hours to charge.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay, we are up
Moving
to Sunday,
along.
April 21st, and we have an item from the Billings Gazette.
Where's Billings? Huh?
Montana. We were just talking about Montana a minute ago.
Clean energy laws. Oh well, this is what we were talking about.
That's right.
Clean energy laws force coal strip owners to weigh options. And coal strip is the name of a town
Yes.
in which a very large power plant is built.
Called the Coal Strip Power Plant.
How clever. And it's in eastern Montana.
Okay, as the state of Washington edges closer to banning coal power by 2025, the owners of Montana's coal-burning Coal Strip Power Plant, and the name Coal Strip has nothing to do with coal,
Not that we know of.
not that we know of, they are weighing their options. Coal Strip supplies customers in 3 states, but without those in Washington, it would be hard to justify running the plant.
Bingo. And they're having a hard time finding buyers for that power.
You know what?
It doesn't look good for coal strip.
If you think about this for a minute, you realize that there are cascading of, effects of these laws, which are local laws, state laws.
Well, state law in Washington is affecting Montana. That's
Absolutely. And what's happening is the coal industry is under pressure from states, from towns. But in addition to that, it's under pressure from banks. We mentioned that earlier. From corporations. We mentioned that earlier.
Hey,
and
it's reality.
It's reality.
It's economics.
But the big thing is they're under pressure from all of these people because their product is no longer competitive. And there are very good reasons not to use it, such as the 107 people who died in Massachusetts every year.
A minor little problem, isn't it?
Every year. Well, you know, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has a number, and it says a human life is worth X amount of dollars.
Yeah, they figured that one out.
Now, do you know what the figure is?
I have. Well, you've mentioned it,
We've
but
mentioned it.
I don't remember.
My recollection is that it's $8 million, which means that when 107 people die as a result of a coal-burning power plant, the cost to the economy is $850 some odd million dollars.
We don't think about that.
If we added that into the cost of coal burning, there
wouldn't
wouldn't
be
be a
burning
plant open.
Nobody would be burning coal.
Nobody would be burning.
Well, they got away with what's it called? Privatize the profits and socialize the costs.
Yeah,
And they just have avoided mentioning the
but
cost.
they had it right from the start.
Yeah.
The cost of burning the coal was the cost of the electricity you get, plus the cost to the environment, cost to the people,
But
the
nobody was
hospital
counting that.
visits. Nobody was counting it. And if you ask the people who are in favor of the so-called free market, they'll say, no, you can't include external costs because you don't know what they are.
Well, their accountants do. Well, we're going to switch to a little bit of religion now.
A little bit of religion.
When airplanes are designed to be energy agnostic,
Yes.
you know electricity is banging at the door.
Okay, I think these guys are fibbing. I think they're fibbing. I don't
Let's
think
get this
these
picture up here.
I don't think these airplanes are energy agnostic at all. Okay, let me read what this thing says, and just leave that up because I want to talk about those airplanes. Lift Air subsidiary Flight Design General Aviation GmbH, based in Germany, announced a new 4-seat airplane that could be certified within a year. Importantly, it is energy agnostic. Fib. So it is ready for a full electric propulsion system. This is from Clean Technica. Those planes, I will tell you, I don't believe are energy agnostic at all. I believe they were made specifically for electric power. And I don't. Look at those planes. Look at their noses. You've got engine cowlings over those noses. Do you believe that you could fit a gasoline-burning engine of any kind inside that space? I don't think so.
I haven't a clue.
I don't think so.
I have
now,
no clue.
one thing I want to point out here is that those two aircraft look pretty much alike, but they aren't. One of them, the far one, is a 2-seat airplane.
Yep, and the other one's a 4.
The other one is a 4, and you can tell the difference because
There's an extra window.
There's an extra window in the 4-seat plane. But those things, if you look at them, the fuselage behind the cockpit is basically just a boom.
Exactly. You can't crawl around back
you
there.
You wouldn't be able to store anything in that. I don't know if there's
No.
batteries in there or not, but there's certainly no. You know, this is that's not what that design was for. but the area in front of the cockpit, I think, is probably just not capable. I mean, you could put maybe a radial engine in an area that small, but it wouldn't have its axis high enough to power the propeller. So I think these things are just strictly for electric motors.
You could very well be right.
Anyway, there it is.
There's an interesting video, 17 minutes.
Yeah.
It's an advertisement, really.
Yep.
About Flight Design, the company.
Oh, yes.
And their carbon fiber systems. Okay. These planes could go for 300 grand.
Yes, well, aircraft are
cheap.
expensive. Aircraft are expensive. Okay, we have our next item is from a website called SaharaReporters.com.
This is an interesting.
It's an interesting story.
Power outages are a thing of the past in Zambia.
The African Development Bank Group celebrated a success, tweeting, quote, "Power cuts are now a thing of the past in Zambia!" Exclamation point. A major boost in electricity production, thanks to a robust hydraulic and solar power generation industry, means the country is now self-sufficient in energy, end quote.
This is all new for Zambia. I mean, they were buying their energy from others. And
they were exporting money.
Yeah.
In order
now
to
they're
import
exporting energy.
In order to import electricity.
Yeah.
And the electricity that they were importing with their hard-earned money was unreliable. So now they've got reliable
They got
sources.
some good hydropower.
Yeah.
And they're putting solar plants all over the place.
And their power is not completely free of power cuts, but the power cuts that they are experiencing are minor, where they had been major.
They had been very major.
Very
I mean,
major.
we're talking weeks without power in some spots.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
We're
here's
up to
our friend again.
Monday, April 22nd. We
Let's get
have
a picture of Greta.
more of Greta Thunberg
This
coming
is
up.
what she really
this is
looks
an
like,
important young woman. She's
Oh, absolutely.
16 years old.
She looks like she's 8.
She does, you know, but
Good for her. I
She's
mean,
a little girl.
yeah.
You know, I mean, we talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being young because she's 29 or 30. This girl is 16.
Absolutely.
She hasn't
And
gone
she's
to college.
speaking truth to power.
Well, what can we say?
I'm
Okay,
going to bring her up again.
this is an item from the Guardian.
Greta Thunberg's visit to Britain is a huge moment for the climate movement.
This afternoon, that afternoon being whenever this was reported in the Guardian, an international sensation is taking to the stage in central London. She's young, but she's admired around the world. Her name is Greta Thunberg. She is a 16-year-old climate hero, and she is much needed in a time of crisis.
Well, this is from The Guardian.
Yep.
There's a 2-minute video in it which depicts Greta talking to the London climate.
Surprisingly clearly.
And it's a good little video. It's only
Yeah.
2 minutes. And
Yeah. She doesn't
it's worth
say
looking
anything
at.
shocking, but
Huh?
she doesn't say anything shocking, but
Well, it depends on who you want to shot there.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
this is interesting from the article. Greta's rise to fame has been vertiginous.
Vertiginous.
I had to look that one up. Tending to produce vertigo. Last year, she skipped school and sat in front of the Swedish parliament in protest against inaction on climate change.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
now she's one of the figureheads of the school climate movement that has swept the globe. It has.
Okay. Our next item is from Yahoo News, and it tells you why Greta Thunberg is upset.
Well, we've mentioned this before,
We have,
and we'll talk
and
about it
we
again.
haven't mentioned it in quite this manner.
Feedback loops make climate change even worse.
Okay, the title to this actually started with the words, "It has already begun."
Yes.
That was kind of hung off with a colon. Rising Arctic temperatures are set free a vast amount of carbon previously locked beneath the permafrost. This is carbon dioxide and methane, which is
That's
carbon
been locked in there
Yeah.
for centuries.
This is millennia, I believe.
Yeah.
This is CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and CH4, which is methane. They're both.
Clathrate.
Huh?
They call that clathrate.
Clathrate. Okay. These additional greenhouse gases speed up warming, and that melts more permafrost. It's a feedback loop, and scientists say it has begun. This is from Yahoo
This is a good
News.
article. There's a 1-minute video about
Yep.
exactly this. They
Yep.
show you the glaciers melting in the feedback loop, and they explain the feedback loop.
Yep.
And there's a lot of pictures in it.
Yep.
A lot of pictures. So
And
it's
this means that even if we stopped emitting carbon dioxide today, this would be a major driver of climate change. So
what
we've got
the article
to do
says is feedback loops are not the root cause, but they make the problem worse.
worse, and it means that we have to go beyond just stopping emitting carbon dioxide, which we haven't even started to really do in
That's the
big
message.
time.
That's definitely
we have
the
to go
message.
beyond that, and we have to start removing the carbon dioxide and the methane from the atmosphere. This is a nightmare, but nevertheless, should we go on?
I think we should go
Our
on.
next
Got
item
a
is
picture
from
coming up here.
Science Alert, and this is said to be a
Come on, you.
polar bear on the ice, and you can
If
see
you look
him.
hard, you can find him.
Yeah, he's kind of a third of the way from the left to the right, and a third of the way from the bottom to the top. So there he is, if you can see him. And what do you have for a title?
Alaska's in the middle of a record-breaking spring melt, and it's killing people.
The average temperature for March recorded at the NOAA Observatory in, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this name. It's.
We'll call it Barrow.
We'll call it Barrow. It used to be called Barrow. Well, I should try it. Utqiagvik. How about that? I think I did fairly well there. The average temperature at what used to be Barrow, Alaska, was 18.6 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for the entire average for the month of March.
And this point is the highest, the furthest northern place in the United States.
That's right. The above normal temperatures are part of a trend that has gone on for many years.
Well, there's a map in this website,
Yeah,
and it shows the effect of temperature change this year
yeah,
in the northern hemisphere.
yeah.
And it's in
Scary.
this map, it's red where there's been big changes,
Yeah, and
blue way down on the bottom where it's nobody knows anything. Blue
Yeah.
is getting colder. Red, it's getting hotter.
Yeah.
And virtually all over the northern hemisphere, the world around, it is hotter
Yep.
by a lot.
Okay, our next item, we're up to Tuesday, April 23rd. We have an item from Metro, and this is interesting. It offers a little hope.
Britain has been surviving without coal power since Thursday.
Yeah.
That was last Tuesday when they said that.
Climate change activists are still blocking streets in London, but according
That they are.
Yeah, they still are now.
Yeah.
But according to tweets from the UK's National Grid, the country has gone without coal for 86 hours straight. The street lights are still working, the internet is still switched on, and the kettles are still boiling. And by the way, the news today was that period without coal finally ended after 90 hours altogether.
Well, it's the longest spell without coal since the Industrial Revolution.
Absolutely. I think
And it's mostly happening because it's windy season.
yes.
Okay, and it's getting a lot of turbine, wind's generating a lot of turbine.
We can guess that next year it's going to be longer because they're putting in more wind turbines. Should we go on, Tom?
Well, there's a little quick one here
Oh,
because
okay.
it's good news, actually. The UK currently has 7 coal power stations still operational. All of them are scheduled to be decommissioned by 2025.
Right. And
So the Brits know what they're doing.
my bet is that they will all be decommissioned before that.
I think you're probably very right. Just
Okay.
because of economics.
Right.
Got another picture
Our next
coming up.
item is from CNN, and we have a picture of
Waikiki Beach.
and that's Diamond Head in the background.
Is that what that is? Okay.
I believe so. My parents lived in Honolulu when they were first married. My father was an officer on a destroyer,
Yeah, you've mentioned that.
and
yeah.
he was in Honolulu when they were in
Well,
Honolulu.
Pearl Harbor's right next to Honolulu.
Yeah, they were in Honolulu when the harbor was bombed.
And Waikiki is actually a part of Honolulu.
Yeah,
Just like Rockaway is a part of New York.
that's right. Okay, what do you got for title?
Hawaii's Waikiki Beach could soon be underwater because of climate change. Lawmakers are fighting to preserve it.
Hawaii State Representative Chris Lee has a 2-year-old niece. If climate change reports about Hawaii are correct, he said, after she finishes high school, she may not be able to lie in the sun on Waikiki Beach.
It may not be there.
This is kind of scary. That means, what, 16 years from now, that beach might be gone.
That's what they're talking. Well, they're already noticing things.
Yeah, they're already noticing things. And guess what? That being the case, the lawmakers are not going to be able to preserve that beach. It's toast.
I think you're right. I mean, it's, there it is.
The climate change, stopping climate change is going to take decades. And, protecting that beach, I don't know what you're going to do, unless you're going to build a seawall out in the middle of the ocean.
Well, this is, again, from CNN.
Yep.
And like a lot of CNN things, there's an extra.
Yes.
And it's a 3.5-minute video on the 2019 floods. It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Okay, our next item is from PV Magazine USA.
California just made made more clean energy than it needed. Just like the UK, huh?
Yeah. The California Independent Systems Operator, the state's grid operator, has shown that for most of the period between 1:50 p.m. and 3:05 p.m. on Sunday, April 21st, the amount of carbon-free electricity generated in the region it covers exceeded customer demands.
Well, there's a good bunch of graphs there if you like graphs.
Yeah, but it means that basically California went for a period of time without using any fossil fuels or nuclear power at all.
Well, actually they were.
Yeah, I know. They were
still generating the CO2 because they didn't shut these other ones down.
Yeah.
So they got natural gas, biogas, biomass, geothermal.
But they're adding...
And even coal.
They're adding, the Los Angeles has had a multi-billion-dollar natural gas peaking plant on order, and they canceled
it.
The orders so that they could put in batteries.
Yep.
Things are changing out there. We are, believe it or not, up to Wednesday, April 24th.
Oh, this is this is, wow, how it is very personal to me.
I believe it.
This is the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority.
Yep.
And when I got out of college, I went to work for the Metropolitan Transit Authority.
Which is not the same as the MTA in Boston.
No, but this
Charlie
is
didn't
New York
ride
City
on
subways.
this. Charlie didn't ride on this MTA.
No.
He rode on a different
But
MTA.
it's interesting because if I were there now, which of course I wouldn't be, this project would probably have been thrown in my lap because I was with the power department.
Yeah. Okay, this image is a rooftop, and it seems to me
but the solar panels aren't there yet. This is an artist's
an artist's concept. Of
well, I'll read the headline there.
Yeah, go ahead.
MTA looks to rooftop solar power to raise much-needed funds.
This is more important than it looks, I think.
Oh, yeah.
In New York, the MTA is looking to lease over 10 million square feet of rooftop space on its buildings to companies that install solar panels. Fully realized, the project could generate over 100 megawatts of renewable energy, enough to power 18,000 households in the state.
Well, I was reading that, and I'm thinking, the MTA uses a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
Those subways run on electricity.
That's right.
Okay? But they're selling the power to somebody else.
Yeah.
Something's wrong here.
I don't know about that, but this is from Curbed New York, Curbed NY. The thing that I find interesting about this is here is the MTA, which was described in the article as cash-strapped.
Yeah,
and
they always have. They've been playing games since 1905.
Yes. Okay. Here is, as you mentioned, an organization which is using a lot of electricity. It's powering trains with them.
Yep.
And what are they doing? They're looking to lease rooftops to solar developers.
Inside job.
They are not putting
it's an inside job.
They are not putting money into this.
No, they're not. Somebody else is
They're
paying
just
for
looking at this and saying, wait a minute, we don't have to put any money into this. We can tell solar developers to use our rooftops and collect money.
Well, they got a lot of roofs.
Yeah,
Bus depots, warehouses.
Yep.
Particularly are the train yards.
Yes.
Now, most of the train yards are not roofed. But it'd be a very simple thing to put up simple roofs. They'd save on maintenance, and they'd make money on the power.
Tom, you remember a couple of years ago, we had an article about the train system, the rail system in the UK.
Yeah. Yep.
And it came from the Imperial College in London.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
We
got a
have
quote
indeed.
from this guy.
Yeah. What happened was there was a very interesting article that said if the rail system in the UK put up solar panels along the tracks, in the stations, switching yards, and so forth, wherever they could put it up, according to the Imperial College in London, which is a really fine research organization, they would have enough power generated out of that to power the entire rail system.
Yeah.
So Tom saw, we had this really cute little graphic that showed it was kind of a cartoony looking graphic of a train traveling through the English countryside. And it kind of struck home with me because my younger brother, who lives out in Marlborough and is a tracker, when he was about 2 years old, and we lived in the UK, he loved to go to Sidmouth Junction in Devonshire. And we'd just drive down there in the car, and so that he could sit at the side of the road and watch the train go by. And the steam engines that went by on those days, this was 1962, they still had steam engines going by. He loved those. Diesels, they scared him.
No kidding, yeah.
But he loved...
Steam engines used to scare the hell out of me.
Now, they're amazing. People who aren't familiar with what they are, you get up close to one of those things, and then you think about how much do those wheels weigh. Oh my gosh. Anyway, this picture kind of struck me because it reminded me of that. But it was a picture of the train going through the countryside.
Yep.
And Tom here said, I don't get it. I don't see the wires.
There's no wires.
So we got an email about 4 days after Energy Week went online, posted by BCTV, and the email said, we aren't using wires, we're using a third rail. And I read this and I said, we? Who's we? and looked at the email source, and it came from the Imperial College in London. And I went back to the body of it, and it said, you can take a look at this link. And I went to the link, and the link went to a web page run by the Imperial College, which had lectures that people, who had missed them might want to watch or re-watch or whatever. And the first thing there was our TV show. How they got this, I have no idea. But there are people who watch this show outside
I sure
the
as
United
heck should have
States.
figured out they used the third rail, because that's what the subways all
Yeah,
use.
well, you don't think about third rails out in the countryside. Are they safe out in the countryside?
Yeah, they are.
I don't know how you'd... But if anything is touching both the third rail and one of the other rails, it's going to get zapped.
It's going to get zapped, but well, depends on what's in the countryside.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived next to, besides the subway, we had the New York, New Haven, and Hartford, and the New York Central Railroad running right by me, about a half a mile from my house. Not even that.
Yeah.
And they had third rails too.
Okay. All right. I believe you. Okay. Our next item is from Clean Technica, and this is kind of scary. It goes back to the permafrost.
Study sets economic impact of melting Arctic permafrost at $70 trillion. More about feedbacks, guys.
Whoa, $70 trillion. Can we afford this?
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Well, Donald Trump says that dealing with, if we try to, what was it? The Green New Deal is going to cost $100 trillion.
Yeah, I heard him say that.
Whew. Yeah, and here,
where did he get that number?
Out of the, one of the numbers, in the 93 trillion, I think it was, somebody actually tracked it down. And what had happened was that somebody at Fox News, I think, heard Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about this and said, that's going to cost $93 trillion.
Yep.
So that was the source of that study. This is a real study.
Well, this $70 trillion is 10 times the benefits that are derived from easier access to mineral resources and lower shipping costs.
Yep. Let me read the thing here.
I think you should.
This is from Clean Technica. Researchers at Lancaster University studied the effects of melting Arctic ice. They concluded that permafrost melting with the release of greenhouse gases, the melting ice that reflects the sun's heat back to space, will increase the total cost of climate change by $70 trillion.
Which is, as I said, 10 times the benefits.
And, we have to deal with this or we're going to be in trouble.
Well, this is a quote from the article.
Yeah?
Destabilized natural systems worsen the problems caused by man-made emissions.
Yes.
A lack of urgency persists.
A lack
that's
of
the
urgency persists, and unfortunately, when we address this, there was a thing that came up in the news today. It will be in our next show about conservative, capitalist Australian farmers.
Yeah.
These are really conservative guys, the Australian equivalent of a redneck, who are demanding that the government do something about climate change. And I looked at this.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the reason is because they've been in a drought for years, and it's been a devastating drought. These guys are not making money. They're losing money year
Big
after
time.
year. Big time. And so they went to the
When
government and
Australia's
said,
in a
do
drought,
something.
it's in a drought.
Yeah, do something. And I got news for you, gang. The government can do all at once. It's not going to end that drought. It's going to have to do more than what it can to end that drought. Maybe there's a way to do it, but it's not on the table yet as far as I can see. Actually, I should take that back. I think it's conceivable that if they took what we know about forests and weather patterns and so forth, they could actually start to green the desert in Australia, and that might have an effect.
Well, they're talking about greening the Sahara.
Absolutely.
So,
okay, we have one last
this is
item
our last
here.
item. You also got a
And
picture.
that picture, by the way, is a picture of a real place. It's not an artist's rendering.
No, it's a place called Saarbeck or Saarbeck.
Saarbeck.
Solar dominates latest German renewable auction.
This is from Clean Technica. Germany's Federal Network Agency announced that the solar industry has walked away as the sole winner from Germany's most recent solar and offshore wind tender, receiving contracts for the entire 210 megawatts awarded in the auction that was heavily oversubscribed.
This is interesting because they were looking for bids on solar and on onshore wind.
Offshore wind.
No, it was onshore.
Onshore.
Yes, onshore
So
wind.
I read that wrong.
Onshore wind tender. And
Okay.
they got very few wind bids,
Yeah.
but they got a lot of
solar.
bids. So they awarded it 18 solar power bids at 6 cents. That's what
They're
one
going,
was, 6
in other
cents
words, they're going
per
to be
kilowatt
spending
hour.
6 cents per kilowatt
Yep.
hour. That sounds like it's about a third of what we pay for electricity.
Yeah.
And they are significantly farther north than we are.
And it was a separate tender held for biomass plants,
Yes.
which also awarded 27 megawatts.
Yep.
So 210 megawatts is not a huge amount, but it's significant.
It's significant, but the thing that's really significant about this is that it shows what has happened to the cost of solar energy.
I think that's exactly what it shows. Yep.
Solar energy is getting so cheap,
These guys are dying to get a piece of the action at 6 cents.
and that in turn tells us something about the future of energy. Solar power in the United States is sold for prices that actually have gone below 2 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah, we've talked about
And,
that.
you know,
That's amazing.
isn't
That's
it?
amazing.
Isn't it? But you know, I remember when Vermont Yankee, the nuclear power plant, the guys there were saying, we're going to give you a deal that you won't be able to refuse.
Too cheap to meter.
Well, what they said, they were negotiating a new contract. We had been paying 3.5
Yeah, I
cents per
remember that,
kilowatt
right.
hour for 20 years, and people were saying, how long is this going to last? Well,
Man, we're going to give you the deal you can't refuse.
right,
You
and
refuse
what
it.
they came back with was 6.5 cents per
Yeah.
kilowatt hour for half the electricity, the rest floating on the based on what grid demand was. And Hydro-Quebec came back and said 6 cents, and Vermont Yankee couldn't deal with that, and so they went out of business. Here we're talking about prices for large amounts of power in Europe.
Which is more expensive.
More expensive, yep. German land is more expensive than American land or Canadian. We are at the end of our show,
we done
Tom,
finished it.
and we should say goodbye.
Let's get us up here.
Now let's get us up. We'll wave goodbye. We hope you come back next time and have
Adios.
a dandy week, a perfectly lovely week.